It was a quiet morning in a vast mansion perched above Greenwich, Connecticut, belonging to Robert Caldwell, a billionaire known for his steel heart and unshakable pride. The golden light of dawn poured through the tall French windows, brushing over the marble floors and grand chandeliers that glimmered above like silent witnesses to a man who had everything except peace. Robert had built his empire from the ground up, earning wealth that stretched across continents, yet he had long forgotten the warmth of a simple smile. His world was built on contracts, rules, and trusting no one. But on that morning, as he lay on the couch pretending to be asleep, his purpose was not business. It was a test, one designed to expose the truth about a girl too quiet for his liking. Her name was Sophie, the new maid, shy, soft-spoken, and almost invisible within the mansion's busy rhythm. She had something about her that unsettled him. Maybe it was her silence. Maybe it was how she looked at Robert's paralyzed mother with quiet compassion. Or maybe it was how she never once looked him directly in the eye. That day had started like any other. The air smelled faintly of lilies from the vases the maids arranged every morning, and the clock chimed 8. As Sophie entered the drawing room, she moved with care, almost afraid to make a sound. Her uniform was neat, though a little worn at the edges, and her hands trembled slightly as she began cleaning the table near where Robert slept. On the polished wood lay a few crisp $100 bills that Robert had intentionally left scattered, bait for temptation. He had heard rumors, small whispers among the staff, that someone had been taking small amounts of money. He didn't know who, but his instincts told him to test the quiet one. He thought she was weak, shy enough to slip a note or two when no one was watching. Sophie's eyes landed on the money, and for a moment her breath caught. Her hands froze mid-air as the soft breeze from the open window brushed against her face. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the polished surface, and for a heartbeat, Robert could almost feel her thoughts racing. He kept his breathing steady, pretending to sleep, curious to see what she would do. But what happened next made his chest tighten in ways he didn't expect. Sophie slowly gathered the bills, not to pocket them, but to straighten them carefully and place them neatly in the center of the table. Then she did something that shattered the cold walls of Robert's heart. She pulled out a small, crumpled envelope from her apron pocket. It was sealed, old, and worn around the edges. She hesitated before placing it beside the money. Her hand lingered over it, trembling slightly before she whispered under her breath words too soft for Robert to catch. Then she stepped back, her eyes glistening, and quietly resumed dusting the nearby shelf. Robert waited until she left the room before sitting up and reaching for the envelope. It was addressed to him, handwritten, simple. For Mr. Caldwell. Inside were two things: a small folded note and a faded photograph. The note read, "Sir, I found this money yesterday under the couch while cleaning, but I didn't know who it belonged to. I didn't want to assume.
I'm leaving it here so it can be returned properly. Thank you for giving me work. It means more than you know. Sophie."
The photograph was of a young girl, maybe 10 years old, in a hospital bed holding a teddy bear. On the back, in the same neat handwriting, were the words, "My little sister Grace, I'm saving for a treatment." For the first time in years, Robert felt something break inside him. The weight of his own distrust pressed hard against his chest. He had tested this girl, humiliated her silently, expecting greed, and instead found grace.
He leaned back in the chair, staring at the picture, remembering how his own sister had once suffered when he was too busy chasing profits to be there.
The memory he had buried for years now clawed its way back into the open. Over the next few days, Robert watched Sophie quietly.
She always arrived early, left late, and worked with a devotion that wasn't for show. She would often stop by Robert's mother's room, adjusting her blanket, or reading softly from an old book.
Robert's mother, once expressionless and detached, had begun smiling again because of that girl's gentle presence.
And still, Sophie never once mentioned her sister or her struggle. She simply worked, grateful for the little she had.
One evening, when the rain poured outside and thunder rolled through the valleys of North Carolina, Robert found himself pacing the halls, unable to sleep. He stopped outside the kitchen and saw Sophie sitting alone at the table, eating a piece of bread with tea. The way she looked at the lightning, half frightened, half awed, reminded him of the days he had watched storms as a child, back when life was simpler. Something about her purity made him realize how lost he had become. The next morning, Robert called his accountant and quietly arranged a donation under Sophie's name to a hospital specializing in pediatric care somewhere in London. He didn't sign his own name on the form. He wanted her to believe it was a miracle, not charity. But when the hospital called her that evening with the news that her sister Grace's treatment was fully funded, Sophie broke down, crying in the hallway. Robert watched from the doorway, hidden in the shadows, feeling something in him heal as her sobs filled the air, not of sadness, but relief. The next day, Sophie came to work with tear-swollen eyes, but a brighter smile than he had ever seen. She worked with a lightness that filled every corner of the mansion, humming softly as she moved. Robert couldn't help it. He had to tell her the truth. When he finally did, when he confessed that it was him, that he had pretended to sleep to test her honesty and had been the one to pay for her sister Grace's care, Sophie didn't say a word. She simply looked at him, her eyes shining with tears, and whispered a quiet, "Thank you," that carried more sincerity than any words of praise he had ever heard in his boardrooms. In that moment, Robert realized that kindness wasn't weakness. It was the strength to stay pure in a world that rewarded greed. He learned that trust could be born not from power, but from humility. From that day on, the mansion changed. The flowers seemed brighter. Robert's mother laughed again, and the air carried a warmth that had long been missing. Sophie stayed on, not as a maid, but as part of something bigger, an unspoken reminder of humanity's quiet power. If this story opened your eyes, if it reminded you that true wealth lies not in possessions but in the generosity of spirit, please like this video. Subscribe to Third Person View and share it with someone who might be too quick to judge, or someone who needs to be reminded of the power of unseen sacrifices. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter, stories that truly connect us.
Before we close, I want to ask you, what do you believe was the most powerful lesson Robert learned from Sophie? And what does her quiet integrity tell us about true character?
Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all.